What if everything you believe about being smart is wrong? Most people think intelligence is loud, fast, and easy to spot, but psychology has found something very different. What if the smartest people are often the ones who don't look like it at all? We confuse confidence with competence, and visibility with value, missing the quiet signals that actually define deep thinking. You might have already noticed this in yourself but dismissed it, thinking it doesn't count. Do you question things others accept too quickly, or feel slightly out of sync in how you process the world? That disconnect is not a flaw, but a signal we rarely learn to interpret correctly. And once you understand it, your entire self-perception begins to shift, quietly but powerfully. Over the next few moments, you'll discover 9 subtle signs most people overlook that reveal a very different kind of intelligence, one that doesn't depend on how loudly you prove yourself, but how deeply you perceive what others miss, and it may change how you see yourself forever. Stay with this carefully now. Here, intelligence is not what most people think it is. Psychology suggests it has less to do with IQ scores, grades, or fast answers, and more to do with how your mind recognizes patterns, processes depth, and notices what others overlook. What you've been calling intelligence might actually be something misinterpreted, like overthinking, sensitivity, or simply seeing connections too early. Society often mistakes depth for confusion, and quiet analysis for being different or weird. But these are often the first signs of a different kind of intelligence unfolding within you. And in a moment, you'll see how these signs quietly appear inward. Some forms of intelligence reveal themselves before you even have language for them. Researchers suggest that some minds reach conclusions long before they can explain their steps. You might recognize this as suddenly knowing something is true without being able to justify it immediately. Another sign appears in how you detect patterns others completely overlook. You see structure in chaos, connections where most people only see noise. This isn't overthinking. Researchers suggest it can reflect heightened cognitive sensitivity. Many people mistake this for distraction or intensity, but it often reflects a mind constantly building internal models of the world. This is where intelligence starts to feel less like speed and more like depth, shaping how you interpret reality in ways you rarely notice until now, and it quietly changes how you understand yourself now deeply. But intelligence doesn't just live in how you think, it also shows up in how you feel. Some of the most overlooked forms of intelligence reveal themselves in how you feel, not just how you think. You may notice that you absorb the emotional tone of a room instantly, picking up shifts others haven't even named yet. This is often described as a kind of emotional radar, silently scanning meaning beneath words. And then there is the deeper weight of feeling things too intensely or too broadly, where your emotional response seems to stretch beyond your own experiences. You don't just feel for yourself, you feel with others, and sometimes even for situations far removed from you. This emotional spillover can feel overwhelming, but psychologists often link it to heightened empathy and deep environmental awareness. And strangely, intelligence doesn't always feel powerful, it often feels isolating. Not because you lack understanding, but because you experience more of it than most people realize or notice around you naturally. Some of the clearest signs of intelligence show up in the way everyday decisions feel heavier than they should. This is because your mind doesn't see one answer, but many possible outcomes unfolding at once. Instead of simplicity, you experience analysis loops, where even small choices branch into different futures. Psychologists often describe this as cognitive overstimulation, a mind that refuses to ignore potential consequences. And then there is sign 6, where conversations themselves begin to feel slightly misaligned. You find yourself listening beneath the words, searching for depth that isn't always there. This creates a quiet disconnect, not because you are superior, but because you process meaning differently. Over time, surface-level conversations can start to feel draining, almost like translating a language you didn't choose. And this is where internal conflict begins to build quietly in the background of your social life. And sometimes, intelligence doesn't feel like clarity, it feels like contradiction. You may even question why simple interactions require so much internal processing, as if your mind refuses to stay on the surface. This is not confusion in the way people assume, but a form of heightened awareness that constantly evaluates meaning, intention, and outcome all at once. And while it can feel like distance from others, it is often the result of thinking in layers rather than in straight lines. That is why intelligence, at this level, often feels less like advantage and more like internal contradiction unfolding in real time, quietly shaping how you relate now. Some signs of intelligence appear as constant internal tension rather than certainty. You may find yourself questioning your own conclusions moments after forming them, as if your mind automatically runs a self-correction loop. This is sign 7, where thinking never feels final, only revised. Then there is sign 8, where you can genuinely argue both sides of your own beliefs with equal clarity, noticing contradictions without resolving them quickly. It can feel living debate with yourself, but it reflects depth of awareness rather than confusion. But perhaps the most misunderstood signs of intelligence are the ones society labels as flaws. Sometimes the final sign of intelligence is not what you are, but what you've been called. Too sensitive. Overthinking. Indecisive. Distant. These labels often feel like criticism, but psychology suggests they can reflect cognitive depth, emotional awareness, and expanded processing. What others interpret as weakness is often a mind engaging more layers of information at once. Society tends to reward simplicity, so complexity gets misread. But intelligence is not always efficient, it is detailed, reflective, and self-aware. And when you begin to see these labels differently, something shifts, you stop apologizing for how your mind works, and start recognizing it now. Intelligence has never been as loud or obvious as we were taught. It moves quietly through thought, emotion, and perception, often mistaken for flaws rather than depth. If this resonated, it is because you've recognized parts of yourself that were never fully named. Being different has rarely meant being less, it often means processing more than others can see or keep up with. Maybe you were never behind. Maybe you were just processing more than others noticed. And if this gave you clarity, share it with someone who might finally understand themselves through it right now in this exact moment too.